The last words of Wang Yibo to Xiao Zhan before dying in his arms. The night was colder than it should have been, as if the universe itself had sensed something unbearable was about to happen. In a city that never truly slept, silence crept into one narrow street, a silence heavy enough to crush even the strongest of hearts. Wang Yibo lay in Xiao Zhan's arms, his breast ragged and shallow, his body trembling as though every second left in him was being borrowed. The world seemed to shrink, leaving only two souls in a devastating embrace, one slipping away, the other desperately holding on. Xiao Zhan's hands shook as he cradled Yibo closer, his voice breaking with every word he whispered. "Don't close your eyes. Please stay with me. I'm here. I'm right here." But Wang Yibo's lips curved faintly into the kind of smile that belonged only to him, a smile that could make even death hesitate for a moment. And then came the words, the last words, that would etch themselves into Xiao Zhan's heart forever, carving a wound that time would never heal. "I never fear the world," Yibo murmured weakly, his voice barely a thread of sound. "But I feared losing you." Those words alone shattered Xiao Zhan's soul. He could feel them sinking into his bones, twisting into his blood, becoming part of the torment that would haunt him for the rest of his life. But Yibo wasn't done. With every fragment of strength left in his failing body, he spoke truths he had carried for years, truths that only the brink of eternity could unleash. "You were the reason I fought, the reason I stayed alive through nights that wanted to swallow me. You never knew how much I loved you because I was too afraid that if I said it, the world would take you from me. And now, here I am, saying it when I no longer have the time I once thought we did. Xiao Zhan, I love you. Don't ever forget that, not even when I'm gone." Xiao Zhan's tears fell uncontrollably, each drop mixing with the blood that stained Yibo's clothes. He pressed his forehead against Yibo's, as if trying to will his soul back into his body. "No, don't say goodbye. Please, don't do this to me. You can't leave me. You can't." His words were desperate, raw, and broken, like the sound of a man watching his world collapse in slow motion. But Yibo's hand, shaking and cold, rose to brush away one of Xiao Zhan's tears. "You'll carry me with you. Every smile, every memory. I'll be there. Promise me you'll live, even if it's without me. Promise me you'll keep breathing when I no longer can." The cruelty of fate was unbearable. Here was a man who had given everything, who had laughed and danced, who had made the world brighter just by existing, now reduced to a fragile shadow of himself, whispering goodbyes in the arms of the only person who ever truly knew him. Xiao Zhan wanted to scream at the heavens, to bargain with whatever force had decided to tear Yibo from him. But all he could do was hold him tighter, as if his grip alone could stop time. "Don't go," Xiao Zhan whispered again, his voice breaking apart. And Yibo, with the faintest glimmer of peace in his eyes, whispered back, "I'll wait for you on the other side." The stillness that followed was the cruelest silence Xiao Zhan had ever known. The weight of Yibo's body and his arms grew heavier, lifeless. The world dimmed, as if even the stars mourned the loss. For a long time, Xiao Zhan didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe. He simply held on, unwilling to accept the finality of what had just happened. But as the night stretched on, the memory of Yibo's last words burned within him, keeping him alive even when every fiber of his being wanted to collapse. Those words became his curse and his salvation, the reminder of love so deep it transcended life itself. He would replay them endlessly. "I never feared the world, but I feared losing you." In the days that followed, Xiao Zhan walked through life as though moving through glass, fragile, broken, yet still holding on. Every stage he stepped on, every spotlight that hit him, every smile he forced for the sake of the world. Behind it all was a memory of the boy who once teased him, once argued with him, once danced beside him as if life had no end. But in quiet moments, when no one was watching, Xiao Zhan would let the grief spill over. He would whisper back to the empty air, as if Yibo were still there, "I heard you. I love you too. Always." Time passed, but grief does not obey time. It carved itself deeper into him with every sunrise, every reminder that Yibo was no longer there. Yet strangely, those last words gave him something to hold on to. Yibo had asked him to live, to keep breathing, and Xiao Zhan, though broken, honored that request. In dreams, Yibo still appeared, smiling, laughing, sometimes silent, sometimes whispering the same words he had spoken that night. Xiao Zhan would wake up with tears staining his pillow, his chest aching with a cruel reminder that dreams were the only place they could meet again. Years later, when people asked Xiao Zhan why his eyes sometimes carried a sadness that even joy couldn't erase, he never told them the truth. He never spoke of a night Yibo died in his arms, of the words that had changed him forever. But in his heart, in the silence of his soul, those words echoed endlessly. Because the truth was this: Wang Yibo's last words were not just a farewell. They were a promise, a love story that would never die, even if one of them had to. And so, Xiao Zhan lived on, not because he wanted to, but because Yibo had asked him to, and somewhere in the quiet corners of the universe, he hoped that one day, when the time came for him to close his eyes, Yibo would be waiting just as he promised. That was the power of those last words. They were not just spoken, they were carved into eternity. The memory of that night never left Xiao Zhan. It lived in him like an unhealed wound. Every detail of Wang Yibo's last words echoed louder with each passing day, refusing to fade. The quiet plea, the trembling confession, and the final promise were etched into his soul. Yet grief has a way of twisting moments into entire lifetimes, and Xiao Zhan often found himself reliving not only Yibo's death, but also the countless memories that had brought them to that fateful night. When Xiao Zhan closed his eyes, he didn't just see Yibo lying broken in his arms. He saw him the way he used to be, young, sharp-eyed, untouchably cool on the outside, but secretly soft inside. He remembered the teasing smirks Yibo gave whenever he beat him at a game, the way he would stubbornly deny needing help yet always end up relying on him. Those small, ordinary moments were what hurt the most, because they reminded Xiao Zhan of everything that should have lasted a lifetime, but was stolen too soon. There were days when Xiao Zhan would wake up convinced he had heard Yibo's laughter in the next room. He would rise quickly, almost tripping over himself, only to meet emptiness. That emptiness cut deeper than any blade. Still, he could not resent Yibo for leaving him. It wasn't a choice. Instead, he carried the pain quietly, replaying Yibo's final words in his mind whenever despair threatened to consume him. "I never feared the world, but I feared losing you." Those words had a way of resurrecting Xiao Zhan whenever he felt himself slipping into the dark. They became his anchor, the reason he forced himself to stand on stages, to smile before cameras, to keep breathing when his body wanted to shut down. He did it for Yibo. He did it because Yibo had asked him to live. Flashbacks came uninvited, sometimes merciful, sometimes cruel. Xiao Zhan remembered the first time Yibo had ever shown a sliver of vulnerability. They had been walking together after long rehearsal, the streets quiet except for the sound of their footsteps. Yibo had suddenly stopped, staring at the night sky with an intensity that puzzled him. "You think stars ever get tired of shining?" he had asked, voice unusually soft. Xiao Zhan had laughed, calling it one of Yibo's strange questions. But Yibo's expression that night had stayed with him, a fleeting shadow of loneliness in his eyes. Looking back now, Xiao Zhan realized Yibo had always carried a fear of disappearing, of burning out before he truly lived. And when his last words confirmed that fear, "I feared losing you," it became clear that his love had been his only tether to the world. The tragedy of it all was that they had spent so long hiding what they felt. There had been stolen glances, unsaid words, touches that lingered too long to be meaningless but too brief to be confessions. Xiao Zhan had always believed there would be time, that one day, when the noise of the world quieted, they would finally tell each other the truth. But fate hadn't given them that luxury. Yibo's confession had come too late, spoken in the shadow of death rather than in the light of life. And yet, even in its cruelty, those words gave Xiao Zhan something he had longed for: confirmation. Confirmation that Yibo had loved him all along, that the bond between them wasn't just his imagination, that even if the world never knew, their love had been real. There were nights when Xiao Zhan would sit by the window, staring at the stars as Yibo once did. Sometimes he would whisper, "I'm still here. I'm still living just like you asked, but it's hard without you." Other times, Silence consumed him, the weight of absence pressing against his chest until he could barely breathe. The world around him kept moving, unaware of the grief he carried. Fans cheered his name, cameras flashed, projects came and went. But Xiao Zhan moved through it all like a man carrying invisible chains. His performances became more emotional, his eyes carrying a depth that people noticed but could never explain. He feels different, people would say. There's something in his expression now, something heavy but beautiful. No one knew that the beauty they admired was born from heartbreak, that behind every smile was the echo of Yibo's last breath. And yet, even in pain, Xiao Zhan found strength in those final words. They became his guiding light, his reason to endure. Live, even without me, Yibo had asked him to keep going. And so he did, clinging to the promise of reunion in another world. Sometimes he imagined what Yibo meant when he said, "I'll wait for you on the other side." Did he picture a quiet meadow under endless skies? Did he imagine them together, without the weight of fame, expectations, or fear? Did he believe in eternity, the way Xiao Zhan now desperately wanted to? The thought gave Xiao Zhan comfort. It made him believe that love like theirs could not be destroyed by death. It simply transformed, existing in another realm until the day they would meet again. But before that day came, Xiao Zhan had to live. He had to carry Yibo's legacy, his memory, his love. He had to breathe for both of them, laugh for both of them, cry for both of them. And he did, though every step forward felt like walking through fire. Years later, when Xiao Zhan stood on a stage with the lights blinding him, he closed his eyes for a brief moment. The roar of the crowd faded, and in that silence he heard Yibo's voice again, soft and trembling, as if carried by the wind. "I never feared the world, but I feared losing you." A tear slipped down his cheek, hidden quickly beneath the stage lights. He smiled, not the forced kind, but a genuine, bittersweet one. Because even in death, Yibo was still with him, whispering through memories, living inside his heart. And Xiao Zhan, though broken, whispered back in quiet of the soul, "You never lost me. You never will." Because love like theirs did not end with goodbyes. It lingered, eternal, alive in every heartbeat, every breath, every word left unsaid. Wang Yibo's last words were not just the end of the story. They were the beginning of a love that would outlive both of them, stretching across lifetimes, waiting patiently for the day when two souls could meet again.